Good Fight with attorney Steve and Josh. There it is. How long has it been?
You have to ask. It's been too long.
Terrible. Well, we did the last one. What was the last one?
I think the last one was, well, nobody knows about the last one yet. That was the last one.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's true. That was a good one.
It is a good one.
A lot of things came to light.
We'll see how good it is after March.
That was the first time we did a mini focus group.
Yeah.
We should do more mini focus groups.
I know, I agree.
So, thanks for listening. Today's topic is to sue or not to sue a child. Kind of sounds weird, but we're going to give you guys a little bit more context. Try to see if we can line up a guest caller.
We should also reference that we can't necessarily by law sue a child.
Well, it's interesting you say that because today at lunch, Rudy Alvarez of Montebello Attorney Services, free plug there for you, Rudy.
He's very selective about clients, though.
He took us out to lunch to say thank you for all the business we've given him over the year, because we're shooting this December 19th. Christmas is next week, right around the corner.
Next week.
Happy holidays, everyone.
I'm done with my shopping.
But you and I got into a pretty heated debate. I don't know why, but it just happens. I know you well enough to know that if I strike a chord, it's a pretty big chord. And all of Whittier felt it. So, but we'll get into it in a second. But it's interesting you say that, you reference to the law, because at the time of our debate, our healthy debate, we both were unaware of what the law is on this issue, right?
Correct.
So tell us what the law says, Josh, about one's ability to sue a child in the state of California, briefly or generally.
Well, from the brief research that I've done on it, and by that I mean the Googling that I've done on it.
Right.
There's, I think, 4 circumstances where parents can be held liable for the actions of their children. I didn't find any circumstances in which the children themselves can be held liable. And we're talking civil here, not criminal, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
They're juvenile courts for a reason.
Yeah.
Those 4 scenarios are, the first would be if there was willful conduct that caused the death, injury, or destruction of property, then up to $25,000, the parents could be held liable for each of the infractions.
Mm-hmm.
The second would be not even really, the parents wouldn't be held accountable for the children's action necessarily. It would be actually for their negligence, their being the parents, their negligent supervision of the children, if they knew or should have known that their child was going to act in a certain way.
Okay.
And then I think the other 2 are, one's a vehicle code section. So if a minor child is driving a car, then the parents can be held liable.
Even with a license?
I believe even with a license. Okay. And then the last is if they injure somebody with a firearm.
Interesting.
So obviously there's the criminal side of that potentially as well, but from a civil standpoint. And I think even the cap on that, actually I don't know. I'm going to assume the cap on that is also $25,000 per infraction.
Okay. A lot of times on the Good Fight with attorney Steve and Josh, we intentionally leave out certain names and do hypotheticals and to remain confidential. I'm going to go out on a limb here, Josh. I don't think it's a big deal. It's been resolved. Well, it's in the process of getting resolved. But so true story. My 11-year-old daughter was at her dance class. I won't name the actual name of the school, but if you know me well, you already know which one it is. But anyway, she was. Here are the facts. She was using her cell phone. I think she was doing one of those TikTok. Is that what have you heard of that TikTok? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a phenomenon.
It's a new craze.
The new craze. So she was doing one of those.
We should do them.
We should do it. So she was, doing one of those, whatever that means. And I think she was holding the phone. And by the way, this is an iPhone XR.
XR.
So it's the one before the one that's out now, which is the iPhone 11, right?
Correct.
And it's the big one. She has the big one.
Yeah, I think the XR only comes one size.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she has that, and we bought that for her, I don't know, about a year ago or something like that. It's a nice phone. She loves it, of course. She's very close to it, drawn to it. Can't live without it, right? Anyway, some random, well, I shouldn't say random. They're colleagues, or for lack of a better word, acquaintances. And this acquaintance snatched it out of her hand as a practical joke, runs into the restroom, closes the door, and I believe some other student, tries to open the door, and in that process, the phone tumbles, screen cracks. Okay, and those are the facts.
Those are the facts. Nothing but the facts.
So, initially, and of course I talked to my wife, and I think she was the one that told me about it initially. And I know my daughter so well, and I knew what her reaction was, or I know what the hell she was kind of going through already. And so I took it upon myself to grab a spare phone that we have. My wife has a phone that she doesn't use anymore. And I wiped out restored it, refreshed it, factory settings, charged it up. That because I was going to pick her up from dance school that night. So I was trying to, have some foresight. And when Ava got in the car, hey, honey, I got, check it out. But she wouldn't have it. She was very upset. She was crying. And so, candidly, as a lawyer and as someone who is a proponent of, right and wrong, I think, and the principles of negligence and tort law, really, my first initial reaction was, okay, well, let's make the responsible party responsible. And in this case, it's I don't know how old that's another 11-year-old child, right? That was my first reaction. And it was heated. I was very, emotional about it because I knew that my daughter, I was trying to, go to bat for her and defend her. And so, we talked about at lunch, kind of the same. So for me, the analysis is no different than the analysis we do every day here at work, which is if our clients are rear-ended, for example, as a result of the negligence of a third party, then they come and they retain us, and we, make sure they get the correct medical treatment when they're done. We make a pre-litigation demand. In other words, we send a demand letter to the insurance company, right, and say, hey, our client has been wronged. She needs to be made whole. This is the amount of money we're asking for. And if the insurance company doesn't want to pay it, the next step is to file a lawsuit, and we litigate. And sometimes it goes in front of a jury, and they decide how much money to compensate our client, right? So in this case, in my mind, the analysis is no different. So in this case, it's, okay, are the parents going to pay? And if they don't, then maybe we'll have to go to small claims or something like that. But Josh Genzik here took a little bit of, how would I characterize it? Offense, maybe? Is that too harsh of a word?
I didn't take offense to it. I just thought, I actually remember vividly when you texted me about this, because you texted me right after it happened, and you asked what the parameters were about suing a minor.
I did.
And I laughed out loud. Marla's in the car, and I started laughing, and at first I thought you were joking, and then I realized
that I wasn't.
That you weren't joking. I was like, okay.
Okay.
I thought it was kind of an outrageous idea because, well, first of all, I thought it was one of your daughter's close friends. And,
okay. It's not.
And how we talked about earlier, that obviously changes a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even in this situation, and I mentioned this earlier when we were talking before we came on the air,
right?
There are certain risks that come with having children. And
having children?
Yeah, with having a child who is going to be around other children, right?
Sure.
Broken windows, broken dishes, broken bones, right? Those are just things that happen around children.
I understand.
And so I guess the idea of the first thought coming into your head being to sue this person or this child, right, for the cost of replacement or the cost of repair of the phone, to me was just outrageous to think that this 12-year-old girl is going to be sued or held accountable in small claims. Because first of all, she's not being held accountable. Let's say there was a scenario in which it was legal to actually go after her.
The child.
Right. First of all, she doesn't have the means to do that. She doesn't work. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have any of those things.
Right.
Right. So really, who you're holding accountable is her parents.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But, is that my inquiry here is, There's two sides of it, right? I understand your side of it is, well, how does my daughter get made whole? And
right.
I understand that side of it. I guess that, in my opinion, when you're dealing with kids, we're I think less about the dollars and cents of it, and I think more about the long term learning, learning that can be done in a situation like this. And I think that the better situation in something like this is to make the girl who dropped the phone understand that every decision that you make, right, as small as it may be, has consequences.
Yeah.
Right. And that the consequences in this is that, your friend or your colleague or your acquaintance or whatever, right, lost something that was very important to her. And so now somebody has to be held responsible. So I understand your side of it, right, in that somebody does have to be held, responsible or whatever word you want to use to describe it. I understand that. I just think that, I don't know. Earlier you asked me if it was the fact that she was a child that makes it different, right? A child instead of an insurance company.
I was just going to ask you if it was an adult,
And it does. It does because, and I think the law takes this into account, right? It's about the capacity to appreciate the decisions that you make.
Sure.
And I don't think that this, 11, 12-year-old girl had the knowledge or foresight to understand that something like this could happen, right? Yeah. There's no, at least to my knowledge, there was no malice behind what she was doing. She was trying to play a joke. I guess there could be an argument made that in itself is, there's a little malice in that, but, kids play jokes on one another. I play jokes on people. You play jokes on people. I'm sure Ava's played jokes on people.
It's interesting you talk about the capacity to sort of understand the consequences of one's actions, right? Because, I don't want to digress too much, but we did talk about sort of the idea that in car accidents, there's an insurance company. They're the ones that pay. And as drivers, adult drivers, typically, we have made the conscious and responsible decision to obtain insurance so that if we are negligent and insurance, right? So here, there isn't that because here it's, well, technically a minor child and their parents, and that was my knee-jerk reaction is like, well, are the parents going to pay? And by the way, the parents did pay, the parents have accepted responsibility and have offered to pay, so that's good. So it's kind of, not that it's moot, I guess it is moot, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, so I guess I digressed and forgot what I was going to talk about, but I mean.
Well, what you brought up about,
capacity
in our world, right? Like, and that's to me what it comes down to is that in our world, the PI world, right, is that for the most part, when we're dealing with insurance companies, at least, there is an adult who has the capacity to appreciate the responsibility that comes with driving a vehicle. Yeah. And that's evidenced by the fact that they've gotten an insurance policy now. Not necessarily a good enough insurance policy in most cases. Yeah. But at least they've understood, and there's also the requirement by law, but they've understood that, look, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with this. There's a lot of consequences that could come along with it, and therefore, I'm going to hedge my bet or whatever you want to call it. And so we talked about earlier that when we go to trial, right, or even in mediation or something like that, we're talking about the defendant taking responsibility for their actions. And we talked about earlier how I think that to some degree the defendant, like the actual legal defendant, the individual who was negligent, has taken responsibility because they went out and they got that insurance policy for instances just like this. Now we're talking about an individual defendant, not a corporate defendant.
Right. I mean, I mean, when we go to trial, we don't have the luxury
Exactly. And so we have to, it's about optics, right? And framing. And so for the jury, we don't have a choice but to paint that defendant in most cases as the bad guy.
True.
But whose fault is that? Right, that's insurance's fault because they've allowed it to get to this point.
Exactly, right.
Okay, but really, who we're holding "quote unquote" responsible is the insurance company.
Right.
And so to tie that back to the situation here, right, from a financial perspective, if we were to sue the minor, which we can't do, but if we were able to sue the minor, we wouldn't be holding her responsible. We would be holding her parents responsible.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I wanted to make clear to you, Josh, right, is that in my mind, we are paid to take the emotion out of things, right? You've said it before on another podcast and on another episode, I think in relation to a family law issue, but really that paradigm or model exists throughout the law, right? We talk about there's a lot of concepts. Justice is blind, right? You see the scales of justice, and the woman having those scales has a blindfold, right? Which connotes kind of like, hey, it's black and white. I mean, there's no. So for me, it doesn't matter if it's a child, doesn't matter if it's an adult. If the responsible individual was negligent, then and you can satisfy those elements of negligence, right? You got, for those of you who didn't go to law school, you have 4 elements. It's duty, breach, causation, and damages. And by the way, none of those elements have anything to do with the mental capacity of, right? I mean, it doesn't. So for me, it's kind of binary in that way. It's like, hey, I don't care who it is. It's nothing personal, Mrs. Whatever, your child, so that was kind of my approach. And I think that if we are to, as personal injury attorneys who live and die and live and breathe this stuff day in and day out, we kind of have to, I feel, make it part of our soul, or, which is to hold people accountable for their negligent conduct.
But there are righteous cases and there are not righteous cases. And I think that's what it comes down to. Okay. Mm-hmm. We don't take every case that walks in our door for a reason. Yeah. Okay. And I think that we talk about context, and everything has to be put in context.
Yeah.
And so I don't disagree with you that to some degree it's binary, right? But I think the law has made very clear that it is very gray. It is not black and white.
Okay.
Right. It at least in my mind, it's not black and white, right? There are rules so that there can be exceptions, right? And those exceptions and those rules create gray area. Mm-hmm. They're not yes or no answers. There's a reason that every time you ask an attorney a question, he says, well, it depends, right?
Yeah.
So I don't agree that everything is binary. I do agree that we're hired to take emotion out of it, but I think that it's an incomplete statement. I think that we're hired to take emotion out of it and interject emotion when it's necessary. Okay.
Yeah.
It's our job, because we there's one layer that we provide as far as a step back, right? Because we're not the person that actually suffered the harm or is going through the dispute or whatever it may be, right? It allows us to control our emotions better.
I can see that. Earlier we were talking about, I don't know if it was in this case or a different case, different context, but the idea of being counselors. And so I understand that today you were on a case, you were on a conference call with some clients, a client, and you were saying, yes, we could do what you're asking for, but know that if we do that, these will be the ramifications. And so, candidly, earlier when we were having this debate, so I get that. Well, let me finish so the listeners know what I'm talking about, which is that, if we were to take legal action against the girl or the parents or whatever, that could have some ripple effect in terms of, the academy and other colleagues and, friends and that kind of a thing. So yeah, I totally understand that. And we even talked about, if we were going to get really legal and technical, adding in some sort of confidentiality agreement. But I mean, so that's my point, right? Because I do think of it like that. I do, but I am practical, but I am aware of sort of these long-term or even short-term effects of our actions or our counsel, our kind of motivating factors or motivating drives.
And I think that that's really the disconnect that you and I are having on this, is that, and I think it really stems from when we became part of the legal profession. I start with the practical matter, right? Like if a matter can be resolved without litigation or something like that, that's where I'm going to start. Yeah. I'm a big proponent of alternative dispute resolution, and the reason that I think it stems from when we came into the legal profession is that courts are so impacted by litigation that coming out of law school just a year ago and people that are coming out of law school now, it's preached to you repeatedly how many cases don't go to trial.
Yeah.
Right. And the value that can come in mastering and appreciating alternative dispute resolution. So I think that my first reaction whenever I see an issue, and I think you can attest to this, is how can we make the situation better? Mm-hmm. Right? Not necessarily how do we win or how do we get the most, right? Or the threshold inquiry is always, what is our client looking for and how do we provide that for them?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily they're going to pay through the nose or they're going to do this or they're going to do that, because that's not the best case for every client, right? Not every client wants to run the gamut and go to trial and be put through those stresses.
Well, it's interesting you say that because so if, and you're not a father yet, But anyway, I guess my question is, if you were in my shoes and you were a father to a 11-year-old girl and she was really upset about her phone, or, I mean, how would you have dealt with it?
I think that, and to be completely transparent with you, I've been in a similar situation to Ava before, right? Where you have something, and as a teenager especially, I was, super attached to my phone. That's your lifeline to your friends and to your significant others at a young age, right?
Yeah.
And so I can relate to that feeling of like disconnect, right? This is your freedom in a little box, basically.
Yeah.
And so knowing what I know now, right, I wish I didn't have a phone. If I didn't have to carry a phone, I would not carry a phone, right?
Yeah.
There's a sense of relief when you don't have it. And so I think I hope, right, I will experience the situation at some point. And so knowing what I know now, the first thing I'll probably do is explain to her, look, babe, I get it. I know you're upset, but I want you to kind of take a step back and understand that what you're so upset about, it's not as important as you think, and I promise you that. And we're going to make it better, right? We're going to make it better. You're going to get a new phone. It's going to be fixed.
Sure.
I promise those things, but I want you to really think about why you're so upset right now, or really why was she so upset?
Yeah.
Right? Was it just I don't know if you've asked this question, but do you think it was the fact that the phone was broken, or do you think that there was something else going on there? Like, why were they playing a joke on her?
I think that her main motive, her primary, driver in being so upset was that she wanted this girl to be responsible for it. She wanted her phone to be fixed, and she was initially worried if the phone wasn't broken entirely, right? I think when she called our house to talk to us, she was noticing some weird sounds coming from the phone. So she thought it was like going to be unusable or whatever.
Right.
We know now that it's not. It's just the screen that's cracked. So there's a lot of mix. But one of them was like, "Hey, little girl, like that's not cool. Like, think about it though, right? I mean,
I know. Look,
anybody,
and look, kids are mean to each other. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm sure that there's some below the surface stuff going on here, and there's a reason that the situation played out like it did.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that, you as a parent and me as a future parent, it's our responsibility to not just look at what's going on, but, what's going on underneath, especially, I mean, she's 11 now.
Yeah.
Right. She's going through so many changes and so many emotions. And so, but I think that being one of the first generations that grew up with, this such an attachment to an inanimate object, right?
Yeah.
And I believe me, I feel like if I don't have my phone on me, like even now, I feel weird. And so I can appreciate that, but I can also appreciate the fact that it feels so good not to have it, that I want to implore the younger generation that's like, look, I know how much it means to you, but I promise you, if you could not have it, it would probably be better for you.
Yeah. Why don't we do this? Why don't we, I have a caller lined up, a good friend of ours. He's a plaintiff's attorney. He doesn't know anything about, our debate or anything, but why don't we ask him the hypothetical if an 11-year-old walked into his office with these facts and see what he has to say. So I'm going to call Howard Blumenthal of the Barnes firm. The Barnes firm. We got a cute little jingle on their commercials, by the way. Howard is in those commercials. Did you know that?
I did not.
Howard's in those commercials, yeah. It's a picture of him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's kind of cool, actually. So let me call him, and right now... Hello, Mr. Howard Blumenthal of the Barnes firm. How are you? This is Steve and Josh with the attorneys on The Good Fight. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How's it going?
Good. You were actually a guest on our show a few weeks ago. Thanks for having done that. And how does it feel to be a guest again today, but via the airwaves, a cell phone call here?
I am honored to be a two-time guest. Has anybody else been a two-time guest?
No, you're the first.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
Yeah.
I like being a trailbreaker.
I love it.
You still at work, Howard?
Still at work?
Of course I am.
Oh, my
course.
Where else
God.
would I be?
Justice never
I'll
sleeps.
get attorneys looking at 7:15 on a
There you go.
Thursday night.
You gotta be
Justice
careful, man.
never sleeps.
Your wife's gonna get jealous.
Yeah. Howard, so, all right, we have a hypothetical for you. So today's topic is to sue or not to sue a child, all right? Assume these facts, okay? Assume that an 11-year-old girl walks into your office and says, Mr. Blumenthal, I have a case. I want you to sue whoever you have to sue, either a child or her parents, but I was on my cell phone, an iPhone XR. My parents bought it for me. It's very expensive. I was using an app called TikTok, and one of my fellow dance classmates came from behind, snatched the phone, ran into a bathroom. Somebody else chased her, opened the door, and then because of that abrupt door opening, the phone fell, screen cracked, and the 11-year-old is very upset. That's like her connection to the whole world and social media and all that. You can imagine now why she would be so upset. But what would you tell that 11-year-old girl in terms of, maybe, yes, I don't know, doing a pre-litigation demand? If they don't pay, then you go to court. Tell me what you would do in that situation.
Well, I think in general, it would be, find out whether or not her parents have a homeowner's policy and determine whether or not they've got coverage, determine whether or not the parents want to take care of it, and then probably I would recommend that the parents of the minor potential client take it to small claims court, because it certainly wouldn't be something that an attorney should get involved in.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that last part of it, because up until that I was on board. I'm hearing what you're saying, but what do you mean by probably not something an attorney should be involved in? What do you mean by that?
Well, in general, what we do is try to generate an income. That would not be an income generating case. Gotcha.
Oh, okay. That's what okay. Well, hear me. Actually, I want Josh to speak here, because so you'll hear it back later, Howard, because I purposefully did not give you more context to this question, this hypothetical that I'm asking you. But
right.
Josh and I had a pretty heated debate earlier today at lunch about, so this potential client's my daughter. It happened to my daughter. And when I told Josh about it, at least when we were talking about it today, because this happened a couple weeks ago, he's kind of irate, for lack of a better word, because Josh has a little bit different analysis or spin on this. Go ahead, Josh. What is your sort of position?
Well, at first I told him he should not sue this 11-year-old girl for this phone, because so I'm of the position, I know that she was negligent. I know that we deal with negligence on a daily basis, and that's Steven's position here, is that when somebody's negligent, it's binary. You either, they did wrong or they did right, or, however you want to look at it. And that's
right.
how he sees it. And so that's why here he thinks there's no difference. Sue her, get your damages, and go about your business. And I just don't agree with that. I think that when you're dealing with minor children, especially of this minority of 11 years old, right, you're not holding her accountable. You're holding her parents accountable first and foremost. And she's not learning anything from this situation, right? And so I'm more interested at this age in not the dollars and cents, but more the learning from what's happened, and understanding and appreciating that with every decision come consequences. And so I think that's better portrayed by having a conversation with this girl and helping her to understand that, than serving her with a complaint.
What do you think about that, Howard?
Well, you can't serve a minor with a complaint, but the thought that comes to mind is, wouldn't it be great if you got a judgment and you could garnish her lunch money for the next 30 years?
That would be great. Hey, I paid for that iPhone XR. I want mine.
Now I have another issue. How much is that phone?
I don't know, $1,000, let's say, $1,000.
All right. See, this is the part when, depending on who is the controlling attorney in the firm, and I think the firm name is Law Offices of Steve Ibarra, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
You know what kind of cases always have to be handled by the attorney in a firm where your name is not Steve Ibarra?
What's that?
Steve Ibarra's kids case, where you have to sue to get back the value of the cell phone.
No. This, by the way, for the record, this wasn't an actual case that we were going to sort of prosecute in-house or whatever.
He says that now.
No. I mean, I did. Josh was the first person I texted. I said, hey, what are my rights or my daughter's rights as someone who has their property damaged.
And I thought he was joking, and then very quickly.
So by the way, how old's your daughter?
She's 11.
Why does an 11-year-old have a $1,000 phone?
Well,
that's a conversation for another time.
A topic for another day.
You're gonna regret making this phone call.
Yeah.
I love when Howard's around. Howard, big news yesterday. What do you think?
That's another. What are your thoughts? Tell us your thought briefly, Howard.
Who did I talk yesterday?
What?
Oh, big news. I forgot about the big news. I mean, we've moved on already.
I know, right?
Like. It's old news now.
It's old news.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
hey, but I heard about a certain law firm with a great settlement today.
Yeah, we did all right. We did all right on a case. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see what the Senate.
Money on that.
It won't have to go to the Senate for a trial anymore. We just settled it in-house, settled it before trial.
Howard, that
right.
on Monday,
right.
On Monday, that case that we just settled for that amount of money, on Monday, that case, the offer on it was $10,000.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, and I seem to recall that Steve went on the listserv.
I did.
And asked people, hey, will we be successful in opposing a motion to continue trial when it's already been done? And a lot of people said no, I think including myself. And you did, and you went from 10,000 to 150 because the trial didn't get continued. So
right. Well, it was a collaborative effort.
This goes to show not everybody knows everything.
Right. Well, Josh did a great work. Actually, Josh wrote the opposition, and did you even have to argue it?
No, it was just their motion was denied just based on the papers.
Yeah, they had a really
$140,000 opposition. Nice.
That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
It's an ROI right there.
Yeah.
That's good work.
All right, Howard, we got to let you go. We're running out of time, but thank you for picking up our call and giving us some of your legal analysis brain power. Thank you.
No problem. Anytime you need me, give me a ring.
All right, you got it. Thank you, Howard.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right, Josh. Well, we got to wrap up. I got to pick up dinner for the family.
You got to pick up dinner. It's probably cold.
You think so? Sushi.
Hold on. Janelle's going to let you eat that?
I'm not. No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm fasting. I got to.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
He's fasting. It's a religious thing. It's part of Festivus.
No, it's getting my blood drawn. Well, I mean, we had a very fruitful dialogue, I think, right?
We did.
All of our dialogues are fruitful, and let's bury the hatchet now.
There are not a lot of chords.
Huh?
There's not a lot of chords to strike, but when I get going, I get going.
I saw that. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening to The Good Fight with attorney Steve and Josh. You can catch us on www.ibarralaw.com. Got to do the gavel. Oh crap! Still learning this thing. All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Love this song.